The escape pod hit the surface at terminal velocity, and Lieutenant Danny Cross knew he was dead. The impact should have liquefied his organs, turned his skeleton into powder, scattered his remains across whatever hellscape waited below. Instead, he woke up dangling upside down in his harness, ears ringing, tasting copper and smoke. The pod's hull screamed as something massive dragged it through dense vegetation. Metal shrieked against stone. Then, silence. Danny punched the release. He dropped 3 feet onto purple moss that felt like broken glass under his palms. His suit's integrity was compromised, multiple tears across the chest and legs. The atmospheric readout flickered red. Oxygen content, 28%. Gravity, 1.4 times Earth standard. Temperature, 42 degrees Celsius. Radiation levels, elevated. The classification tag made his stomach drop. Class-9, Deathworld. Survival expectancy measured in hours. Something roared in the distance. The sound rolled through the crimson forest like thunder, shaking leaves the size of solar panels. Danny scrambled to his feet, ignoring the pain, lancing through his ribs. The collective fleet had torn apart the human research vessel in orbit. He'd watched Captain Morrison die on the bridge. He'd seen the drive core breach, seen his crewmates sucked into vacuum. The pod had been pure desperation. The forest canopy stretched 300 feet overhead, blocking out most of the system's binary stars. What light filtered through came in shafts of angry orange and sickly yellow. The undergrowth moved with predators. Danny spotted 6-legged shapes stalking between the massive tree trunks, each one the size of a terrestrial bear. Their scales shifted colors, active camouflage that would have been invisible if not for his suit's failing thermal overlay. He pulled his sidearm. 10 rounds. Might as well be a toy. The nearest creature turned its head toward him, and Danny counted 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its jaw unhinged, revealing rows of crystalline teeth. It took a step forward, then stopped. The creature's nostrils flared. It backed away, disappearing into the undergrowth with surprising speed. That was wrong. Predators didn't retreat from wounded prey. The roar came again. Closer now. The ground trembled. Birds, if they could be called that, erupted from the canopy in a shrieking cloud. Danny ran, his boots crushed bioluminescent fungi that released spores and glowing clouds. The air tasted like metal and burnt sugar. His lungs burned. The gravity made every step feel like he was wearing lead weights. He crashed through a wall of hanging vines and found himself at the edge of a cliff. A river churned 200 feet below, the water black and viscous. Steam rose from its surface. On the opposite bank, something the size of a commercial airliner pulled itself from the liquid. Its body was covered in overlapping plates of natural armor, each one seeping a fluid that hissed when it hit the ground. Danny turned. The creature from the forest emerged from the tree line. But it wasn't hunting. It was fleeing. A shadow fell over Danny, massive and swift. He threw himself flat as jaws big enough to swallow him whole snapped shut where his head had been. The apex predator was 30 feet of muscle and fury, built like a fusion of Earth's most dangerous predators amplified to nightmare proportions. It should have killed him instantly. Instead, it paused, lowering its massive head to sniff at Danny's torn suit. The creature's breath washed over him, hot and rank. Then it did something that made no sense. It sat, like a dog waiting for a command. Its tail, spiked and powerful enough to shatter trees, wagged once. Danny's suit computer chimed. Pheromone analysis complete. Chemical composition match. The predator was reacting to his sweat. The collective had studied Deathworlds from orbit, cataloged their horrors, designated them forbidden zones. They'd never understood why humanity thrived on Earth, why humans were stronger, faster, more resilient than species from gentler worlds. The answer was crawling across Danny's skin in the humid, alien air. Earth was a class death world. this planet was only one step worse. And to its apex predators, Danny screamed. One thing. The rescue beacon in his pod had activated automatically. The collective would track it. They'd send soldiers to finish what the fleet started. But as Danny looked at the massive predator sitting obediently before him, an idea formed. Humans hadn't conquered Earth by being the biggest or strongest. They'd done it by making friends with wolves. He extended his hand slowly. The creature's nostrils flared again. Then it pressed its enormous head against Danny's palm, scales warm beneath his touch. Somewhere in orbit, the collective fleet was celebrating the destruction of another human ship. They had no idea what they'd just created. Danny Cross was stranded on a planet that should have killed him in minutes. Instead, he'd just adopted the deadliest thing on it. The second sun was setting when the collective dropships entered the atmosphere. Danny watched them from the ridge above his destroyed escape pod. The predator he'd named Rex pressed against his side like a mountain of scaled muscle. The creature's body heat was keeping him warm as the temperature dropped. His suit had given up completely 3 hours ago. But Danny felt fine. Better than fine, actually. The air here was thick and rich, easier to breathe than the recycled atmosphere on the research vessel. The collective sent 12 soldiers in full combat armor. They moved in a tight formation, weapons sweeping the forest. Their species, the Velk, were considered elite warriors across 5 star systems. They'd conquered 17 worlds. On their homeworld, gravity was 0.7 Earth standard, oxygen content 18%, average temperature 20 degrees Celsius. Paradise compared to this hellscape they'd tracked Danny to. He could have hidden. The forest was dense enough, but Danny was done running. He'd spent 6 hours exploring this Deathworld, and something had become very clear. The collective had made assumptions about humanity based on their own weaknesses. They thought Deathworld survival was about technology, about suits and weapons and shields. They didn't understand adaptation. They didn't understand that humans were the product of millions of years of evolution in conditions only slightly less hostile than this. Rex growled, a sound that started deep in the creature's chest and rolled out like an avalanche. The Velk formation tightened. Their leader, identifiable by the red markings on his armor, raised one manipulator appendage. The squad stopped moving. Sensors had detected the predator. Danny stood up from behind the ridge. The Velk weapons immediately targeted him. He raised his hands, not in surrender, but in a casual wave. The gesture clearly confused them. Through their armor's external speakers, he heard rapid clicks and whistles, Velk language. His suit translator was dead, but he didn't need it to understand their shock. The human was alive. Suit breached. Exposed to Class-9 atmosphere. Standing in the open like he owned the place. Danny walked down the slope. Rex followed, each footfall shaking the ground. The Velk opened fire. Plasma bolts screamed through the air. Danny threw himself sideways, rolling behind a boulder. Rex charged. The predator moved with terrifying speed for something so massive. Closing the distance to the Velk formation in seconds, what happened next would haunt Velk military academies for generations. Their plasma weapons, designed to punch through starship hulls, scorched Rex's scales, but didn't penetrate. The creature's natural armor had evolved to withstand this planet's radiation, its volcanic vents, its atmospheric lightning storms. Weapons that relied on heat were nearly useless. Rex hit the formation like a meteor. Armored Velk soldiers went flying. One tried to run. Rex's tail caught him mid-stride, the impact audible even over the squad's panicked communications. Danny watched from cover as the creature he'd befriended 6 hours ago systematically dismantled an elite alien strike team. But Danny wasn't just watching. He was learning. The Velk armor had weak points. The joints flexed with each movement, exposing softer material underneath. Their helmets had ventilation ports along the sides. Their weapons overheated after sustained fire, requiring cooldown periods. Information that would be valuable if humanity survived this war. 3 Velk broke from the chaos and ran toward the dropship. Danny sprinted from cover, his legs pumping against the heavy gravity. Every muscle burned. His lungs worked overtime in the thick atmosphere. On Earth, he'd been an average athlete. Here, he was superhuman compared to the Velk. He caught the first one before it reached the ship, tackling it from behind. They hit the ground hard. Danny's fist found the helmet's ventilation port. The Velk inside screamed as this world's atmosphere rushed into its lungs. The other 2 made it to the dropship. Engines whined to life. Danny ran harder, but he wasn't going to make it. Then Rex was there, jaws clamping down on the ship's landing strut. Metal groaned. The engines shrieked, trying to generate enough thrust to break free. Rex pulled, muscles bunching beneath armored scales. The dropship tilted. Sparks flew from damaged systems. Then the landing strut tore free, and the ship corkscrewed into the forest canopy, exploding in a ball of green flame. Silence fell over the clearing. Velk bodies lay scattered among the purple moss. Their sophisticated armor, their advanced weapons, their tactical training, none of it had mattered. They'd come to a Deathworld with equipment designed for civilized space. Danny and Rex had home field advantage, and the field was specifically designed to kill anything that didn't belong. Danny walked to the burning wreckage. The Velk inside hadn't survived. He should have felt something. Remorse, guilt, horror at what he'd done. Instead, he felt cold calculation. The collective had destroyed his ship. Killed his crew, hunted him across the galaxy to this forgotten planet. They'd expected to find a corpse or a dying human begging for mercy. He salvaged what he could from the wreckage. Ration packs that he cracked open and immediately regretted. The Velk food tasted like synthetic paste and made his stomach churn. He tossed it aside. The forest provided. He'd already identified 3 types of fruit that his suit's dying database had flagged as technically edible for humans, though it warned of hallucinogenic properties and severe digestive distress. Danny had eaten one an hour ago. He felt energized, focused, alive in a way ship food had never managed. The weapons were more useful. Velk plasma rifles were biometrically locked, but their grenades were simple enough: point and throw. He collected 6 of them, hanging them from his belt. The armor was too small for his frame, but he stripped components anyway. Plates that could be fashioned into tools. A power cell that might recharge his beacon with enough jury rigging. Rex nuzzled his shoulder, nearly knocking Danny over. The predator's tongue, rough as sandpaper, licked his face. Danny laughed. The sound was strange in the alien forest, human and out of place. He scratched behind the creature's armored head ridge, finding a spot that made Rex's rear leg kick involuntarily. Night was falling. The binary stars had set, but the forest wasn't dark. Bioluminescence painted everything in shades of blue and green. Creatures moved through the canopy, their calls echoing. Some sounded almost musical. Others were screams of prey meeting predator. Rex's ears, if the armored protrusions could be called that, swiveled constantly, tracking sounds Danny's human hearing couldn't detect. Danny found shelter in a cave carved into the cliff face. The entrance was narrow, defensible. Inside, the stone was warm to the touch, heated by geothermal activity. Rex circled 3 times before settling near the entrance, a living security system. Danny sat with his back against the wall, Velk plasma rifle across his lap. The collective would send more soldiers. When the dropship didn't report back, they'd escalate. Maybe orbital bombardment. Maybe they'd glass the entire region from space. But that would take time. Command decisions, tactical planning, bureaucratic approval. The collective was an empire built on procedure and protocol. Humanity had survived by being scrappy and adaptable. Danny closed his eyes, listening to the alien world around him. 6 months ago, he'd been a junior officer on a research vessel, cataloging stellar phenomena and running sensor sweeps. The war had changed everything. The collective viewed humanity as a threat, an upstart species that had spread too far too fast. They didn't understand that Earth had prepared humans for exactly this kind of conflict. Every human carried the legacy of surviving a Deathworld. Stronger bones, denser muscles, more efficient oxygen processing, better healing, higher pain tolerance. Traits that seemed excessive in civilized space suddenly made perfect sense here. This planet was trying to kill everything on it constantly, and Danny's biology was built to say no. Rex's growl woke him before dawn. Danny was on his feet instantly, rifle raised. The predator stared into the forest, every muscle tense. Danny followed its gaze and saw lights moving between the trees, not bioluminescence. Artificial illumination. The collective had sent reinforcements, but these weren't just soldiers. Danny counted at least 30 lights moving in coordinated patterns. A full assault force they'd learned from the first squad's failure. Whatever was coming would be prepared for Rex, prepared for the environment, prepared for a desperate human with nothing to lose. Danny smiled in the darkness. Let them come prepared. He had something they didn't. He had a Deathworld fighting on his side, and he'd just spent 12 hours learning exactly how to weaponize it. The collective had made a fatal mistake. They'd given him time to adapt, and humans, more than any species in the galaxy, excelled at adaptation. He stepped out of the cave, Rex at his side, and watched the lights grow closer. The second sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. Somewhere in orbit, collective commanders were reviewing tactical data, planning their attack, confident in their numerical and technological superiority. They didn't know they'd already lost. Because Danny Cross wasn't fighting to survive anymore. He was fighting to win. The collective assault force reached the clearing at first light, and Danny was waiting. He'd spent the pre-dawn hours preparing the battlefield, using every lesson Earth's Deathworld had taught humanity. The Velk didn't colonize hostile environments. They terraformed, or avoided them. It made them predictable. 36 soldiers in upgraded armor moved in a three-pronged formation. Their weapons were heavier than the first squads, designed for large predators. They'd brought portable shield generators, anti-armor missiles, even a mobile artillery platform that floated on repulsor fields. Overwhelming force, the collective standard doctrine. Danny watched from the ridge, Rex pressed flat beside him. The predator had learned quickly that stillness meant hunting. Its active camouflage blended perfectly with the rocks. Danny had smeared himself with mud from the river, covering his heat signature. The Velk sensors swept past them twice without detection. The first trap triggered when the artillery platform crossed a patch of seemingly solid ground. The purple moss concealed a sinkhole Danny had spent 2 hours expanding. The platform dropped 15 feet into a pool of the river's black water. The Velk had assumed it was just toxic. They were partially right. It was also incredibly corrosive to their specific armor alloy. Screams filled the air as the platform's crew abandoned it, their suits already smoking. The formation scattered, exactly as Danny predicted. Velk tactical doctrine emphasized individual survival when facing unexpected threats. It kept casualties low. It also made them vulnerable to coordinated attacks. Rex moved on Danny's signal, a hand gesture the creature had learned to associate with prey. The predator hit the left flank like a landslide. Velk soldiers fired wildly, their heavier weapons tearing chunks from Rex's hide, but not stopping the charge. Danny had learned something crucial. Rex could heal. He'd watched the creature's injuries from yesterday's fight close overnight, scales regrowing, wounds sealing. This planet's life had evolved regeneration as a basic survival trait. While Rex created chaos, Danny moved. He positioned stolen Velk grenades throughout the clearing, using vines to create tripwires. The first 3 detonated almost simultaneously, catching soldiers fleeing from wrecks. The explosion sent purple moss and shattered armor flying. The Velk formation collapsed entirely. But the collective didn't send incompetent commanders. The officer in charge rallied his troops, establishing a defensive perimeter using the portable shields. Energy barriers flickered to life, creating a protected zone. Weapons fired in coordinated volleys, forcing wrecks back. They were adapting. That was dangerous. Danny circled wide, using the forest's natural cover. His human eyes struggled with the alien color spectrum, but his ears worked fine. He tracked the Velk by their communications, their movement, their breathing. Prey sounds. He'd become the predator. The shield generator hummed, a constant frequency that drowned out other noises. Perfect. Danny approached from downwind, staying low. The Velk were watching for wrecks, for frontal assault, for conventional tactics. They weren't watching the trees. He'd found them earlier. Vine creatures that lived in the canopy, territorial and aggressive. They'd attacked him twice before he learned to avoid their hunting grounds. Now he drove them toward the Velk perimeter, using thrown rocks and his own scent trail. The vines dropped like organic cables, wrapping around armored soldiers. Velk weapons fired upward, slicing through plant matter. But for every vine destroyed, 3 more descended. The creatures were colonial organisms, vast networks spanning multiple trees. Killing one tendril meant nothing to the whole. Danny used the distraction. He sprinted to the shield generator, slapping a grenade against its power core. 5 seconds. He dove behind a boulder. The explosion tore through the defensive perimeter, and Rex charged through the gap. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. The Velk were elite soldiers, but they were fighting on all fronts. Rex from one side, vine creatures from above, Danny's grenades from unexpected angles, and the planet itself beneath their feet. The ground here was unstable, riddled with tunnels from burrowing creatures. Armored soldiers, weighing twice what they should in the heavy gravity, fell through into networks of underground predators. 10 minutes. That's how long the collective's overwhelming force lasted. 10 minutes of coordinated attacks using the environment as a weapon. When silence fell, Danny counted bodies. 31 Velk dead. 5 escaped into the forest, but they wouldn't last long without support. Danny stood in the center of the clearing, breathing hard. Rex limped over, bleeding from a dozen wounds that were already beginning to close. The predator's tongue lolled out, and if Danny didn't know better, he'd say the creature was grinning. His hands shook. Adrenaline crash. He just killed 31 sentient beings. Used tactics that would be considered war crimes in civilized space. Weaponized an ecosystem. Become exactly what the collective feared humanity could be. The thought should have horrified him. Instead, he felt clarity. The collective had started this war because they feared human potential. They'd seen how quickly humanity spread, how easily humans adapted to hostile environments, how human soldiers fought with a ferocity that didn't match their relatively fragile biology. They decided to eliminate the threat before it grew. But fear-based decisions rarely ended well. The collective had underestimated what desperation could do to human creativity. They'd stranded him on a Deathworld, thinking it would kill him. Instead, they'd given him the perfect training ground. Danny salvaged what he could from the destroyed assault force. More weapons, more grenades, intact armor pieces. Most valuable was a communication relay. It was damaged, but functional. He could hear collective command frequencies, their encrypted chatter. They were panicking. 2 squads lost. No survivors reporting back. They didn't know what was down here, only that it was eliminating their forces. He keyed the transmitter to a human emergency frequency and sent a tight beam signal into orbit. 3 words repeated on loop. Human. Alive. Hostile. Any human ship in range would understand. There was a survivor on the surface, and he'd gone to war. The 3rd day brought complications. Danny woke with a fever. His body was fighting something, probably a dozen different pathogens from this alien ecosystem. On Earth, he'd have been hospitalized. Here, he suffered through it in the cave while Rex stood guard. His immune system, honed by millions of years of fighting Earth's diseases, went to work. By evening, the fever broke. He'd adapted. That night, the collective changed tactics. Orbital bombardment. Not enough to glass the region, but precision strikes targeting the areas their satellites identified as probable hideouts. Danny saw the incoming fire from the cave entrance, energy beams that turned sections of forest into ash. They were getting smarter, more cautious. Good, smart enemies made mistakes trying to be clever. Danny needed them to make mistakes. He moved camp, traveling deeper into what his salvaged Velk sensors identified as the planet's most hostile region. The dead zones, areas where even this Deathworld's predators feared to go. Radiation levels spiked. Atmospheric toxins concentrated. The ground itself was unstable, prone to sudden volcanic vents, perfect hiding spot. Rex followed reluctantly. The predator's instincts screamed danger, but loyalty to pack overrode survival sense. Danny understood. Humans had bred that trait into dogs 40,000 years ago. This planet had apparently discovered the same evolutionary advantage. They found shelter in a lava tube, the walls still warm from recent activity. Danny's salvage sensors screamed warnings. A human shouldn't survive here. But Danny was learning that shouldn't and couldn't were different things. His lungs burned with each breath. His skin blistered from radiation. His body healed it all faster than the damage accumulated. Earth's legacy. Humanity didn't have scales or claws or venom. They had endurance. The ability to just keep going long after any reasonable creature would have died. Persistence hunting taken to its logical extreme. The collective sent drones next. Hundreds of them, swarming through the forest with thermal sensors and chemical sniffers. They found the cave. They found the clearing. They mapped every location Danny had used. Then they sterilized those areas with plasma fire. Danny watched from the lava tube's entrance, 6 miles away. Let them waste ammunition on ghosts. Every drone they deployed, every missile they fired, every soldier they sent planetside was resources spent. The collective controlled thousands of star systems. But logistics was logistics. Eventually, this backwater death world would become too expensive to bother with, unless he gave them a reason to stay. Danny activated the communication relay he'd been rebuilding. The encryption was collective military grade, impossible to crack, unless you had the physical hardware which Danny now possessed. He tapped into their command frequency and listened. The fleet admiral was furious. 47 soldiers lost. Multiple dropships destroyed. Millions of credits and equipment abandoned or destroyed. All hunting one human on a planet that should have killed him in hours. The admiral's career was in jeopardy. Failure against humanity looked bad. Failure against one human looked catastrophic. Political pressure from the collective council. Demands for results. Threats of reassignment. The admiral was desperate. Desperate commanders made aggressive choices. Danny smiled. He'd been waiting for this. He transmitted a message on every frequency the relay could access. No encryption. Just raw audio. Human language that the collective's translators would process instantly. This is Lieutenant Danny Cross of the human research vessel Endeavor. I'm alive. I'm armed. I've killed 47 of your soldiers using nothing but this planet and one local predator. You want me dead? Come down here and do it yourself. The transmission repeated on a loop. A challenge, an insult, a psychological weapon designed to exploit what Danny had learned about collective military culture during his time on the research vessel. Honor meant everything to Velk warriors. Being mocked by prey was intolerable. Rex growled beside him. The predator sensed Danny's tension, the anticipation of violence. Danny scratched behind the creature's head ridge, that sweet spot that made the massive predator lean into his touch like an oversized puppy. "They're coming," Danny said to the alien creature that couldn't understand his words but recognized his tone. "All of them. Everything they have. And when they do, we're going to show them why Earth is a death world, why humans are death world predators, why the collective made a mistake thinking they could hunt us to extinction." The response came within the hour. The entire collective fleet in orbit repositioned. Dropships launched. Not squads this time. Companies. Hundreds of soldiers. Armored vehicles. Air support. A full military invasion targeting one human and his pet. Danny watched them descend like falling stars. The collective was committing everything to this fight, exactly as he'd planned. Because while they focused on this death world, while they threw resources at killing one human, they weren't watching the outer system, where 3 human warships had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their weapons hot, their crews ready, and their captain very interested in why there was a human emergency beacon transmitting from an impossible location. The collective had come to exterminate one human. They'd accidentally started the battle that would define the war. The human warships entered orbit like avenging angels, and Danny allowed himself a moment of savage satisfaction before the real fight began. The collective fleet detected the human warships immediately. 3 vessels against their 27 should have been suicide. On paper, the humans were outgunned, outmassed, and outnumbered. On paper meant nothing when humans were involved. Danny watched from the lava tube as the first exchange of fire lit up the night sky. Energy weapons created aurora patterns across the atmosphere. Explosions bloomed like flowers. The collective had technological superiority, but human tactics were born from Deathworld thinking, aggressive, unpredictable, willing to accept casualties that would make other species surrender. The lead human ship, the destroyer Relentless, dove straight into the collective formation, point-blank weapons fire, ramming speed. Insane by any civilized standard. The collective scattered, trying to establish firing solutions on a target that refused to follow predictable patterns. 2 Velk cruisers collided trying to evade, their shields interfering with each other. Meanwhile, on the surface, the collective invasion force had problems. They'd committed 400 soldiers to capturing or killing Danny. Those soldiers were now scattered across hostile terrain, dealing with the planet trying to kill them. Command structure broke down as officers died to native predators, environmental hazards, and carefully placed traps Danny had spent days preparing. Danny's emergency beacon had done more than call for help. It had given the human fleet exact coordinates and telemetry data about collective troop positions. The humans exploited it ruthlessly. Orbital strikes targeted collective formations, not the massive planet-killing weapons prohibited by galactic law, but precision munitions that dropped through the atmosphere like hammers of God. A Velk company attempting to establish a forward base vanished in a cloud of superheated plasma. Another squad, hunting through the dead zone, found themselves bracketed by artillery from orbit. The collective's numerical advantage evaporated as human fire support turned the surface into a shooting gallery. But the collective had their own orbital support, and they started using it. Energy beams carved through the forest, creating lines of glass and ash. They were no longer trying to capture Danny. They were trying to deny the humans their prize. If they couldn't have this planet, they'd make sure the humans couldn't either. Rex pressed against Danny, whining. The predator understood explosions meant danger. Danny didn't blame it. The entire region was being turned into a hellscape worse than the planet's natural state. He grabbed the communication relay and what supplies he could carry. Time to move deeper. They ran through the dead zone as the world burned around them. Orbital strikes turned night into day. The ground shook with each impact. Chunks of forest the size of city blocks simply ceased to exist, replaced by craters that glowed with residual heat. Danny's human endurance let him maintain a pace that would have killed most species. His lungs processed the thick, toxic air. His muscles burned but didn't quit. Rex loped alongside, bleeding from shrapnel wounds but regenerating fast enough to keep moving. They found shelter in a canyon system, deep enough that orbital sensors couldn't get accurate readings through the interference from volcanic activity. Danny collapsed against the canyon wall, gasping. His body was reaching its limits. Enhanced healing couldn't fix exhaustion. Even Deathworld biology needed rest. The relay crackled. Human voice. Accented English. "This is Captain Lisa Grant of the Relentless. If anyone's receiving this transmission, respond immediately. We're taking heavy fire and need to extract surface personnel." Danny grabbed the relay. "This is Lieutenant Danny Cross. I'm in the canyon. System coordinates following. How many can you extract?" A pause. Then, "Cross, you're the emergency beacon? How are you alive?" "Long story. How many can you extract, Captain?" "We've got one drop shuttle operational. Maybe 20 personnel, max. But Cross, our sensors show collective troops converging on your position. Hundreds of them. They're not giving up." Danny looked at Rex. The Predator was panting, exhausted, but alert, ready to fight. Always ready to fight. Loyalty that went beyond survival instinct. "Captain, I need you to trust me. I've spent 4 days on this planet. I know its rhythms. I know what works and what doesn't. The collective is coming because they think I'm cornered. Let them come." "Negative, Lieutenant. Our mission is extraction, not last stands. Then, extract me after I thin the herd. I've killed 47 collective soldiers using this planet as a weapon. I can kill more, but I need fire support and time." Another pause. Longer. Danny could hear weapons fire through the relay, the sounds of ship-to-ship combat. Captain Grant was fighting her own battle while trying to decide his fate. "You have 1 hour, Cross. We'll provide what orbital support we can. After that, the shuttle launches whether you're on it or not. Relentless out. 1 hour." Danny smiled grimly. Enough time. The canyon system was perfect for an ambush. Multiple entry points, but only one viable path through the center. Steep walls that funneled movement, volcanic vents that could be triggered with the right explosive charge. Danny had every grenade he'd salvaged, a Velk plasma rifle with half a charge, and one very angry predator. The collective came in force. Danny's salvaged sensors counted 200 soldiers entering the canyon. They moved carefully, shields overlapping, sensors sweeping for traps. Professional. Cautious. Afraid. Good. Danny triggered the first set of charges when the formation reached the canyon's narrowest point. Volcanic vents erupted, spraying superheated gas across armored soldiers. Shields held, but the heat was intense. Velk physiology wasn't built for this. They'd never evolved in high-temperature environments. The formation tried to fall back. Danny triggered charges behind them. Now they were trapped in the canyon, surrounded by volcanic activity, with visibility reduced to meters. Chaos. Rex attacked from above, dropping from a ledge onto the rear guard. The Predator's mass and momentum knocked soldiers sprawling. Jaws found weak points in armor. Claws tore through shields. The collective tried to coordinate fire, but in the confusion, they hit their own troops as often as the target. Danny moved through the smoke and steam like a ghost, every human advantage magnified. His eyes adapted to the dim light faster. His lungs processed the toxic air better. His heat tolerance was higher. He was in his element, and the collective was dying in an environment their species was never meant to survive. Plasma bolts screamed past his head. Danny returned fire, not aiming for kills, but for mobility, shooting out joints on armored suits, targeting sensor arrays, creating more chaos. The collective formation disintegrated into individual soldiers fighting for survival against an enemy they couldn't see, and a planet actively trying to kill them. 30 minutes. Half the force was down, the rest retreated, dragging wounded when possible, abandoning them when not. Danny let them go. The canyon could only hold so many bodies. He called for extraction. The human shuttle dropped through the atmosphere like a meteor, defensive systems screaming as collective point defense tried to swat it from the sky. It landed in a wash of retro-rocket fire, ramp already lowering. Danny ran for it. Rex followed. The shuttle crew stared in shock at the massive predator. One reached for a weapon. "He's with me," Danny said, no room for argument in his voice. The pilot, a woman with sergeant stripes, looked from Danny to Rex and back. "That thing coming aboard? That thing saved my life." Repeatedly, "He's coming." The sergeant shrugged. "Your funeral, if it eats someone, strap in. This extraction is going to be rough." Danny and Rex barely made it into the cargo bay before the shuttle lifted off. G-forces pressed them into the deck as the pilot pushed the engines beyond safety margins. Collective fire peppered the hull. Alarms screamed. The atmospheric exit was violent enough to rattle teeth. Then they were in space, and the Relentless was there, point defense creating a protective bubble of fire. The shuttle docked hard. Danny stumbled into the hangar, Rex at his heels, and found himself surrounded by human soldiers who couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. Captain Grant met him in the hangar. She was tall, scarred, with the look of someone who'd seen too much combat. Her eyes swept over Danny's torn suit, his sun-darkened skin, the alien predator sitting obediently at his side. "Lieutenant Cross, you look like hell." Danny laughed. It came out slightly unhinged. "Captain Grant, I've spent 4 days on a Class-9 Deathworld, killed approximately 70 collective soldiers, and made friends with the local apex predator." "I feel like hell," Grant smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Then you'll fit right in with this crew. Briefing in 1 hour. We need to know everything about that planet's defenses. The collective has 3 more ships inbound, and we're going to need every advantage." "What's the strategic situation? We're winning." "Oh, barely. Human forces are pushing the collective back on 4 fronts, but they're throwing everything they have at us. This war either ends with humanity subjugated, or the collective broken. No middle ground." Danny nodded slowly. He'd seen the collective's determination firsthand. They fought with the conviction that humanity was an existential threat. Maybe they were right. "I can help," Danny said. "This planet taught me things. About human advantages. About using hostile environments as weapons. About making allies in unexpected places." Grant looked at Rex. "That thing is your ally? He's my friend. And if we can replicate what happened down there, if we can show other humans how to work with Deathworld ecosystems, the collective won't stand a chance. They terraform planets. We adapt to them. That's our edge." The captain studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Get cleaned up. Get fed. Get that animal secured. Then tell me everything. Because if we can turn Deathworlds into assets instead of obstacles, this war just got a lot more interesting." Danny followed a crew member to the showers, Rex padding behind him. Other crew members pressed against the corridor walls, giving the predators space. Danny didn't blame them. Rex was terrifying to anyone who didn't know better, but Danny had spent 4 days learning that terrifying could be useful. The collective feared humanity's potential. Maybe it was time to show them they were right to be afraid. He stood under scalding water, washing away days of mud and blood and alien soil. His body was covered in bruises, cuts, radiation burns, all healing, always healing. Deathworld biology at work. When he emerged, clean and wearing a fresh uniform, he found the crew had set up a space for Rex in the cargo bay. The Predator circled 3 times and settled, watching Danny with intelligent eyes. "I'll be back," Danny promised. "We're not done yet." Rex's tail thumped once against the deck. Understanding, or something close to it. The briefing room held 10 officers, all looking exhausted. Grant presided from the head of the table, holographic displays showing ship positions, casualty reports, strategic projections. The war was larger than Danny had imagined. "Status," Grant said. Her tactical officer spoke up. "We've destroyed 6 collective ships and damaged 4 more. But we've lost the destroyer Fearless and the cruiser Indomitable. The reinforcements they called for arrived 3 hours ago. We're now outnumbered 12-2. Bad odds." Grant didn't flinch. "And the surface?" "Collective forces have withdrawn to fortified positions. They're no longer hunting cross. They're digging in, waiting for their fleet to secure orbit. Which means we need to either break their fleet or extract our forces and retreat." Grant turned to Danny. "Tell me there's a third option, Lieutenant." Danny pulled up his salvaged data, sensor readings from 4 days on the planet's surface, environmental analysis, predator migration patterns, volcanic activity schedules, everything he'd learned by surviving. "The planet kills anything that doesn't understand it," Danny said. "The collective is treating it like a hostile environment to overcome with technology. That's the wrong approach. The right approach is to work with it." He highlighted several regions on the map. "These are nesting grounds for what the collective designates alpha-class predators. Creatures like Rex, but bigger. The collective fortified positions are right in the middle of mating season territories. They don't know because they're relying on orbital sensors, which can't penetrate the atmospheric interference." Grant leaned forward. "You're suggesting we let the wildlife do our work for us?" "I'm suggesting we give it a reason to. The collective's fortifications use sonic deterrents to keep predators away. If we take out those deterrents, nature handles the rest." "That's brutal," one officer said. Danny met his eyes. "They glassed an entire region trying to kill me. They destroyed a human research vessel and killed everyone I served with. Brutal is what wins wars against enemies who want to exterminate you." Silence. Then Grant nodded. "How do we disable the sonic deterrents?" "Small team insertion. The collective won't expect ground assault when they control the surface. We go in quiet, sabotage their defenses, get out before the feeding frenzy starts." "You're volunteering? I know that planet better than anyone, and I've got an advantage."
Danny smiled. "I smell like I belong there."
"The predators won't attack me immediately," Grant considered. "You'd need a team. People willing to risk Class-9 exposure." "I'll go." Everyone turned. The speaker was a massive man, easily 6'6", built like he'd grown up in heavy gravity. His name tag read, Martinez. "I grew up on a colony world. 0.95 Earth standard gravity, but nasty atmospheric conditions. I can handle it." Others volunteered. Within minutes, Danny had a squad of 6, all of them from harsh colony worlds. All of them used to environments trying to kill them. Human adaptability in action. "Insertion in 4 hours," Grant said. We'll draw the collective fleet away with a feint toward the outer moons. That gives you a window. You have 12 hours to complete the mission and reach extraction before the fleet returns. Danny nodded. 12 hours. Enough time if everything went perfectly. Which it wouldn't. The squad prepped in silence. Each member checked their equipment with the focused attention of people who knew. One mistake meant death. Martinez approached Danny. "Truth," the big man said. "What are our chances?" Danny thought about the last 4 days. The running, the fighting, the constant threat of death. He thought about Rex, about volcanic vents and alien predators, and a planet that had tried to kill him every moment he'd been on it. If we're smart and lucky, 50-50. If we're just smart, maybe 30%. If we're neither, he shrugged. We don't come back, Martinez grinned. I like those odds better than what the collective gave humanity when they started this war. Let's go teach them about Deathworld tactics. The drop was cleaner this time. The collective fleet took Grand Spate, chasing the Relentless and her sister ship toward the outer system. The shuttle slipped through the gap in coverage and deposited Danny's squad on the surface, before disappearing into the clouds. They stood in the crimson forest, breathing thick air, feeling heavy gravity pull at their bones. The colonists adapted quickly. Martinez actually laughed. Damn. This feels like home. Danny led them toward the first collective fortification. Rex appeared from the undergrowth, having tracked Danny's scent from orbit. The squad tensed, but Danny calmed them. Everyone, meet Rex. Rex, meet the humans who are going to help us win this war. The Predator sniffed each squad member carefully, then sat, tail wagging. Holy hell, someone whispered. It's like a dog. A dog that weighs 3 tons and has armor plating, Danny corrected. But yes, exactly like that. They moved through the forest, using everything Danny had learned, avoiding certain plants, reading the bioluminescence patterns that indicated predator territories, using the terrain instead of fighting it. The squad followed his lead, trusting his experience. The first fortification appeared after 2 hours of careful travel. Prefab walls, automated weapons, sonic deterrent towers humming at frequencies that made Danny's teeth ache. Inside, 30 collective soldiers prepared for a siege that was coming from entirely the wrong direction. Danny's squad spread out. Silent hand signals, coordinated movement. They'd done this before, on a dozen worlds against a dozen enemies. The collective was just one more. Martinez took point with Danny. They approached the nearest sonic tower, keeping low. The device was unguarded. Why would it need guards? It kept the wildlife away automatically, shaped charges placed carefully. Timer set. They moved to the next tower. 20 minutes. All 6 towers rigged to blow. The squad retreated to a safe distance. Danny triggered the charges. The explosions were almost anticlimactic. Small pops that disabled the devices. The humming stopped. Silence fell over the fortification. Then the forest moved. Predators had been waiting at the edge of the sonic perimeter for days, drawn by the scent of collective rations, but unable to approach. Now the barrier was down. They surged forward in a wave of scales and teeth and ancient hunger. The collective fortification lasted 7 minutes. Automated weapons cut down the first wave of predators, but there was always a second wave. Always a third. The planet's ecosystem had been disturbed, and it was restoring balance. Danny's squad watched from the ridge. One member looked sick. We just killed 30 soldiers. We created an opportunity, Danny corrected. The planet did the rest. That's the difference between us and the collective. We understand natural systems. They try to dominate them. They hit 4 more fortifications before the collective fleet returned. Each time, the results were the same. Remove the sonic deterrents. Let nature take its course. By the time extraction arrived, the collective ground forces had been reduced by 2/3 without a single human firing a shot. The shuttle ride back was quiet. The squad processed what they'd done. Indirect warfare. Environmental weapons. Tactics that felt wrong, but worked perfectly. Captain Grant met them in the hangar. The collective is retreating. Their admiral called for a ceasefire to recover survivors. We estimate they've lost 3,000 soldiers to the planet's wildlife. Did you accept the ceasefire? Danny asked. Grant's smile was sharp. We told them they could have their survivors back when they returned our dead from the Endeavor. They refused. So we're staying in orbit and making sure they understand the cost of fighting humans on Deathworlds. Danny nodded. What's next? Next, you teach every human soldier in the fleet what you learned down there. The collective thought Deathworlds were barriers. You proved they're training grounds. That changes everything. Over the following weeks, Danny became a lecturer. He taught soldiers about environmental warfare, about working with ecosystems instead of against them, about human advantages in hostile environments, about making allies with species the collective dismissed as mere animals. Rex became a symbol. Proof that humans could adapt anywhere, befriend anything, turn any environment into an asset. Other ships started reporting similar successes, humans working with native predators on colony worlds, using hostile weather as cover for attacks, turning the galaxy's most dangerous planets into fortresses the collective couldn't assault. The war turned, slowly at first, then faster. The collective had superior numbers and technology, but humanity had something they couldn't counter: adaptability, the willingness to go places no sane species would consider, and then thrive there. Danny stood on the observation deck of the Relentless, watching the planet rotate below. 4 days on its surface had nearly killed him. Those same 4 days had taught him lessons that were winning a war. Captain Grant joined him. Strategic Command wants you back on Earth. They're building a training facility based on your reports. Every human soldier will learn Deathworld tactics. And Rex, your oversized puppy, is apparently coming with you. Command tried to separate you two for study. He nearly ate 3 xenobiologists and a general. They've decided you're a package deal. Danny smiled. Sounds right. We're pack. The collective is calling for peace talks. They've realized they can't win this war. Not when humans can fight from anywhere. Will we accept? Grant shrugged. That's above my pay grade. But between you and me, I think we've proven our point. Humanity isn't going anywhere. Any species that tries to exterminate us better understand they're fighting evolution itself. Danny looked at his reflection in the observation window. Sun-darkened skin from days under binary stars, scars from 100 close calls. Eyes that had seen what humans could become when pushed to their limits. The collective had stranded him on a death world, thinking it would kill him. Instead, they'd created a symbol, proof that humanity belonged among the stars, not despite being from a death world, but because of it. Lieutenant Danny Cross had survived the impossible, and in doing so, he'd shown the galaxy exactly why humanity was the most dangerous species to ever leave their home planet. Behind him, Rex padded into the observation deck and sat, tail thumping against the floor. The predator looked at Danny with something that might have been affection, or hunger, or loyalty. It didn't matter which. They were pack. They'd survived together, and that was all that counted. The stars wheeled overhead, and Danny Cross smiled. Let the collective call for peace. Let them realize their mistake. Humanity had been tested in fire and emerged stronger, just like they always had, just like they always would.